That was stunningly beautiful. Not only fun to watch, it was just so meaningful. And I'm not sure how it is with you, but I got up this morning and it's a gloomy, rainy day. And now, not only do I get pictures of the sunrise from people like you, but you text me when the sun is not shining. And I said, Don, the sun is not shining, but the sun, Jesus, is shining, and it was obviously shining in that incredible video. So something hit me as I read the gospel lesson for today. In the gospel lesson, Jesus is preparing his disciples for his departure. And he says, I will not leave you orphaned, because I will send an advocate, and you know who that advocate is. That advocate is the Spirit, and that Spirit lives inside of you and is always going to be with you. And I can just hear the disciples say, wait a minute, we've had you for 3 years. We've touched you, we've listened to you, you've taught us what life is all about, and now you're going to leave? And what is the Spirit? What is that something that is supposed to live inside of us? And what does it mean to be orphaned? You know, Jesus says he won't leave us orphaned, but my guess is there are times when you and I feel orphaned. I talked to a gentleman this past week. Now, he didn't use the word orphan, but he could have. He said, I was married to her for 55 years. She was in the hospital, I couldn't see her, and now she's gone, and I feel orphaned because I'm alone. Every single day, someone says, I get up, I make coffee, I go to work, I love my job. Every day I take care of my family. All of a sudden my shop is locked up. I haven't been to work for over 2 months. I feel alone. I feel orphaned. Many of you know what that's like. Even on Sunday, you get up in the morning, you get your family ready, you come to church, you walk in the front door, you go into Charter Hall and you sit down with your buddies, you have that awful coffee that I make for you. It's part of your routine. It's a part of who you are. And now for the last over 2.5 months, you can't go to church on Sunday morning. And you feel orphaned because that essential part of your life has been taken away. You take care of your nieces and nephews every day. You go to the nursing home to listen to your grandpa's war stories. He doesn't understand in his dementia why you haven't come back. You can't go see him. You can't go see her. You feel alone. You feel orphaned. Or maybe you're a nurse at Palos Hospital. You work that shift from like 12 to 12. You come home at midnight. You've been with all those sick patients all night long. You walk into your house, it's dark, you're alone, and you feel orphaned. We all have those times. And you can be with a bunch of people, and sometimes you feel alone. So I got here this morning, and I took a little walk through the building. You know, the gym is empty, and I make coffee, but it's a small pot of coffee. I put some more T-shirts on the chairs in honor of you. And I must admit, this morning, before the service, I felt kind of orphaned. I felt alone because I miss your presence. Yeah, but something, I guess, happened yesterday that reminded me of who we are and reminded me of the Spirit that keeps us going. I have an old racquetball buddy. He's from Ireland, and he's an Irish builder. And he calls me and he says, Don, I have a very dear friend of mine, and he's engaged, and they're from Ireland. And they work here now. But they need to get married, because if they go back to Ireland and they're not married and want to come back here, she'll never get back here. They love each other. They need to get married. And he said, would you be able to do the service? And I said, well, doing weddings is one of the few things I know how to do. When would you like to do it? He said, how's Saturday? And I said, okay. And so they come to the church yesterday afternoon. The 4 of them walk through the front door. And they sit in social distance in the first row. And they are Zooming their families, because their families are all in Ireland in different places. And so on their laptop are all these little squares with their families waving to them, and they introduced me to their Irish family. And I said, well, I'm the minister doing the service. And I said, by the way, can I ask you a question? Are there any Irish Lutherans? And they said, no, we don't know of any Irish Lutherans. And I said, well, I'm the perfect person to marry your daughter and your son. After the wedding, we're talking a lot. And she says to me, she said, you were total strangers. And when I came here, I had no idea what to expect. But when we pulled into the parking lot, I noticed that the front door was propped open. And I looked at my husband-to-be and our friends, and I said, you see that open door? I think it's going to be okay. And I remember a few years ago, because I have a tendency to keep the front door open so the bees can get in and all that kind of stuff. And one of the people in the church got really mad at me. And he says, Don, why do you always prop open the front door? And I said, it's because that's symbolic of who we are. I'm sure all have times when we feel orphaned. I felt that way a little bit this morning when I was walking through an empty, humble temple. But the gospel lesson for this morning reminds me that Jesus will never leave us orphaned. His Spirit is in every single breath that we take every day. When we choose to love, when we choose to be kind, when we step back and let the fragility and the majesty and the strength and the weakness of our humanity simply flow, when we don't try to pretend to be somebody we're not, we know that we'll never feel orphaned, that we can be whole again, because this humble carpenter walks every step that we take. And our door, the door to our church, whether it's closed or not, is always going to be open, because your heart is open, because your soul is open. It'll always be open wide. Tomorrow's Monday, and maybe just a couple people will drop by the church. But I'm going to prop the door open anyway, because that's who we are. Our next song, by the way, is Anyway.